Hello everyone, this is a follow-up to the last couple of videos I've made about ice types. Feel free to watch those, but the context you'll need is the following. Ice is a pretty bad defensive type, yet many of them are given mostly defensive tools and stat spreads. I refused to buff Ice's offensive ability because it is already a strong offensive type, and buffing Ice offense buffs Ice moves, not Ice Pokémon. Needless to say, they're just proposals. I don't work at Game Freak, so it's not like it's going to be patched into Scarlet and Violet. Speaking of Scarlet and Violet, I'm not factoring in terrestrialization because that's not a fundamental mechanic that appears in every generation. With that out of the way, onto the topic of this video. How would Ice dual types be affected by new resistances? I used the Pokemon type calculator extensively when reworking the Ice type. It looked like some people were confused about how the type chart worked before and after the buffs, especially with dual typings. For example, a lot of people were not suggesting but saying strange things like ice is weak to grass and water is weak to ice. That was not part of my rework or reality for that matter. Nevertheless, our discussions are meant to theorize, educate, and make stupid mistakes in the pursuit of knowledge. So we're going to go through every ice dual type, even the ones that don't exist, and look at how they've changed defensively. It's important to get a sense of where those theoretical buffs left ice overall. Thematics are cool on paper, but I wouldn't want thematics to stifle the variety, fun, and most importantly, the agency of players in the gameplay experience. Are Ice types too defensively strong now? Are they still defensively weak? These are questions we should still be asking, and since there isn't a mod yet to try these changes, let's use the Pokemon type calculator to get a preview. These aren't ordered by viability or anything, I'm just changing the secondary type in order on the calculator. We begin with Ice Normal. In reality, this was a pretty nasty typing to have. Ice and Normal amplify weaknesses while only giving one immunity and resistance in return. With the proposed buffs, this pairing loses that Rock and Stealth Rock weakness. It's still weak to Fire and Steel, and still extremely weak to Fighting. The pairing resists Ground, Electric, and Water, and is immune to Ghost. So a Pokemon like, Calaskidon Beartic from the Calaskida region would overall need to avoid its fighting weakness and capitalize on its ghost immunity along with resistances to get in. It still has trouble hitting its weakness, Steel, with its stabs, so it will need coverage or a teammate to handle Steel types. Next is Ice Fighting. This typing is actually pretty funny. In the real games, the pair doesn't cancel out any weaknesses, aside from Ice's current Rock weakness. Looking at Ice Fighting's matchup after the buffs, it keeps all the weaknesses, but gains 4 resistances. The pairing resists, is weak to, and takes a neutral hit from about a third of types across the board. Even with the changes, this is good for an offensive Pokemon. Ice Fighting offensively hits 9 types for super effective damage and hits 9 types neutrally. It's an unresisted pairing when it comes to solo types. Picture a cool and level-headed fighting type Pokemon that must strategically choose just the right time to switch in. If it can't get a free switch from a prediction or a pivot, then it will use its many resistances as an opportunity to get in. But you can't blindly switch it in without thinking because it'll be blown up by its many weaknesses. Even if you get a KO with it, there are plenty of chances to revenge kill with its many weaknesses. I'm not proposing every ice fighting type be designed like that, but the concept shows how you can create an interesting risk-reward system with high weakness, high resistance Pokemon. Make this type a glass cannon or a hit-and-run attacker, and you're good to go. Third is Ice Flying. Let's start with the most obvious buff to this dual typing. They don't lose 50% of their health on the switch from Stealth Rock. Don't get me wrong, they're still taking 25% because flying is weak to rock. But every little bit helps, right? Electric is now neutrality and water becomes resistance. Ice Flying isn't the craziest type, but it can at least switch in. Maybe with team support, heavy-duty boots might feel a little less mandatory. Fourth up, Ice Poison. We don't have this type yet, but I remembered seeing a video 4 months ago that was conceptualizing poison types for a Norse Pokemon region. It's a regional variant of Salandit that's ice poison and lives in the region. I'm just going to put a blue Salandit on screen as a placeholder. Regardless, I highly recommend checking out Michael Ryan's video if you want to see the real thing and what it evolves into. The link is in the description. Now back to the typing. Ice Poison in the real game would have 5 weaknesses and 5 resistances. However, with the proposed changes, it would be a tanky pairing. It loses the Rock and Ground weakness, and gains resistance to Water and Electric. Offensively, you will still have trouble with Steel, but will gain the opportunity to hit Fairies. It's really interesting. I always assumed Ice Poison would be an offensive or debilitating typing, and it certainly still could be, but the defensive potential of this pair is actually quite nice. I'd really love to lab out this typing in a mod competitively and even in a challenge run. Fifth is Ice Ground. Mamoswine's evolutionary line accounts for all the ice ground types we currently have. Mamoswine is really good. It's one of the few ice types to win a world championship, and whenever people talk about good ice types, it doesn't even need to be brought up, it's just a classic. With the proposed changes, ice ground types lose a water weakness and gain a resistance to ground and rock. A Pokemon like Mamoswine would overall have 4 weaknesses, 3 resistances, and 1 immunity. This is when we don't factor the fire and ice reduction from thick fat ability. Ice ground is an excellent offensive type and will still be the main draw for this pairing. 2 bad defensive typings for the price of 1, it's Ice Rock. This typing won't be weak to Stealth Rock anymore. Rock doesn't resist rock, so an Ice Rock type lost 25% health to those sneaky pebbles. This typing gains a neutrality to ground and water, and gains a resistance to electricity. Slow Pokemon with this typing like Aurorus and Hisuian Avalugg might get more chances to retaliate because they lose 3 weaknesses and resist normal, flying, poison, and Bolt Beam. They would still prefer to avoid fighting and steel type attacks at all costs because of the devastating ×4 weaknesses. While it's not the focus of the video, Rock may appreciate some defensive reworking, but it's a good offensive type with Ice. Ice Bug. Yikes. This typing has a ×4 weakness to fire regardless of what we do. Luckily, with the changes, at least rock and stealth rock damage is lower. More importantly, electric and water are gained as resistances and ground gets upgraded to a double resist. They struggle to hit and take hits from fire and steel types. Ice bug types will have to leverage their new resistances to get in and fire off their stab moves as much as they can. Frostmoth is a Pokemon that greatly appreciates this change. It takes half damage from special moves thanks to its ability Ice Scales, so it's effectively got 5 double resists and 9 resists when a special attack is used on it. This gives it ample chance to come in, set up a Quiver Dance or 2, and let it rip. Ice Ghost is next. This typing has good offensive and defensive potential. Rock is lost as a weakness, but we keep the weakness to Ghost, Steel, Fire, and Dark. Despite the weaknesses Ghost brings to Ice, it turns the weakness we left into an immunity. 6 resistances and 2 immunities offer great opportunity for our spooky frosty pals. An easy prediction is that Frostlass will be able to get off more layers of spikes. As for future Ice Ghost types, it could truly go either way. Remember how Aegislash had 4 weaknesses, multiple immunities, and a bunch of resistances? This typing could just as easily be used for slow offense and defense as Steel Ghost. A fast physical Ice Ghost could also be a fun thing to see in the future. Ice Steel is next, and this one is very resilient. Ice and Steel is arguably oppressive unless you're using fighting or fire moves on it. It loses the ground weakness, and rock, water, and electric become resistances. Overall, this typing resists 10 types, double resists 1, and is immune to 1 type. It can only be hit by its 2 double weaknesses, or neutrally by Dark, Steel, Ghost, and Ground. They'd have to be careful about giving out this typing, and be mindful about stats, just like they did when they added Aegislash and preemptively nerfed Steel. Ice Fire, the type we've waited for and received in Generation 8. Zen Mode Galarian Darmanitan is the only true Ice Fire type we have at the moment. This is a great offensive typing that struggles to hit water and fire. With our proposed changes, this typing would only be weak to rock and fighting. It gains a neutrality to ground and water, and a resistance to electric. Ice, electric, and fairy end up being the key resistances. I'd be interested in seeing more Pokemon with Ice-Fire typing so that we can see how this would perform with different stat spreads. Ice-Water is a common one. This typing loses a weakness to rock and electric, and gains a resistance to ground. In total, it's weak to fighting and grass, resists ground, and super resists water and ice. Many ice-water types are defensive like Lapras, Dugong, and Walrein, so they will probably thrive a little. Ice Grass is another one that technically benefits, but still retains its main weaknesses. Ice Grass loses the rock weakness, but still has 5 weaknesses and a double weakness to fire. On the defensive side, water, ground, and electric become double resisted. This typing has to avoid its weaknesses at all costs, so it needs to capitalize on its double resists to get in. I could see this type focusing on damage and support, over trying to wall. Picture a regional Whimsicott, fast, ice grass, supportive, with potential to spread Prankster Frostbite. Oh geez, Prankster Aurora Veil would be strong too, but at least it would have to manually set snow to do it. Ice Electric, the type that gets stab on Bolt Beam. With the changes, ground and rock become neutralities, and it stays weak to fire and fighting, resists water, and double resists electric. Other than that, this type just wants to spam Bolt Beam coverage for as much damage as possible. Ice Psychic is another pairing that has trouble hitting Steel. Rock becomes neutral, and it gains a resistance to electric grounded water. With this type, as long as you play around the weaknesses and switch in on your resistances, there's great potential to do damage. Speedy Ice Psychic types will definitely have an easier time, but the new resistances mean that there are more situations where slow bulky ones can do more. Ice Dragon after the changes would have 4 weaknesses, 2 resistances, and 2 double resists. At the moment, the only non-legendary Ice Dragon is the Baxcalibur line. Its existing resistances get better, so it has more chances to set up its dragon dances. Because it still has the Fighting and Steel weakness, it still must be wary of Priority Mach Punch and Bullet Punch. Since we did not change Ice's interactions with Dragon and Fairy type, the Ice Dragon pairing still has to worry about those types. Ice Dark, the penultimate type on this list. This typing is similar to Ice Psychic. It gains 3 resistances and loses a weakness, but still has many weaknesses. I imagine that the current and future Dark Ice types will appreciate it if their stats and abilities allow them to focus on damage. The resistances certainly are nice to live stray attacks without needing a focus sash, but the typing doesn't necessarily want to be defensive. It would really need to take advantage of base stats and snow to be consistent. Imagine an Ice Dark regional Tyranitar with snow warning. Last but not least, Ice Fairy. The type still wants to avoid poison, fire, and steel, especially since it can't hit fire and steel well without coverage. Gaining ground, water, and electric resist is great. With this change, the number of weaknesses and resistances is about the same as Water and Fairy in the real game. Just swap out one of Water Fairy's ×2 weaknesses for a ×4 weakness. I'm a Dirty Alolan Ninetales fan, so it makes me happy to see it getting this close to being a Water Fairy type. That's it. We've gone through every single Ice Dual type with the adjustments. There's a few observations that I'm sure you've very easily identified. Firstly, Fire, Fighting, and Steel are almost always persistent weaknesses for the type, and frequently go up to a ×4 weakness. Second, whether you remove Rock or Fighting as a weakness, the one that remains is still pretty troublesome. Rock and Fighting are both great attacking types, so Ice is far from invincible whichever you pick to remove as a weakness. But have you noticed the last detail? Pause and take a moment to think about it if you like. Did you get it? I'll give you a hint. Go through all the Water Dual types, from Water Normal all the way through to Water Fairy. Do you see it now? You may realize that right now, they have got about the same amount of weaknesses and resistances that buffed Ice has. The two types are almost parallel, but Ice just has way more ×4 weaknesses. It's funny how we added all those changes, and Ice is still not as consistent as Water typing. This is okay though. The goal was to make defensive Ice types better, not the best. We can add and take from Ice to refine the balance in the future. I believe we've reached a good stopping point. Thank you all for joining me and sticking it out with this Ice type rework process. Give the type calculator a try. It's really fun. Other than that, I will talk to you all some other time. Later!